So when I was a missionary priest, I met this nun who I just thought was ingenious because she was very aggressive. She worked with the poor, and when a load of supplies for the poor would be coming into the airport, she had this thing where she had all these people lined up who are going to get in there, take the stuff, and get out. Because what happens in several third world countries is that you have to pay a bribe or give a certain amount, greasing some hands and stuff. And this nun, very joyful, but she wasn't going to have any part of that corruption. She's not paying any bribes. Nobody's getting any food for the poor except the poor. So she has all these people lined up, and she has this way of being more clever than the corrupt bureaucrats. So she was always getting out of the bribes. And I like that story because I liked her aggressiveness, that she could be joyful and aggressive at the same time. She's not going to give in to corruption. I think that's a great example. Or maybe not a nun, but here's another quick example, is that I knew this woman in another parish, I'm going to call her Mildred. So Mildred, she actually had kind of a hard life in one sense. Her mom died when she was young. Her father was a German immigrant who was working, so she had to raise the kids. And she was very good at it. She becomes a nurse, and she does spend her life as a nurse. But she, too, in a way, is very aggressive. She's very aggressive about wanting to change the world in her little area. Now, when I say aggressive, I don't mean mean, because like Mildred, she always had a great sense of humor. So I'm always excited to see her because she's so funny. Honest to God, she could be a stand-up comedian. And her son, who's a little younger than I am, I saw him once at a high school sporting event, and I saw him, so I go up and I said, "Oh, how's your mom?" And he immediately says, not all of her stories are true. And I said, I don't care if they're true or not. I find them funny. She's always hilariously funny. But she always has an agenda. And I like her because she's funny. I love her because she always has an agenda. And the agenda is always something good. So as a nurse, with all the people that she worked with, what I learned is, whoever she was working with, she would kind of try and point them to kind of understand the sanctity of life. Not just doing the job as a nurse, but also this agenda about how precious life is. She wants everybody to have kind of a deeper conversion. And so in her own slightly manipulative way, she was always has an agenda. That's what I love about her. And she's always on. So if you're wondering, what does this have to do with the gospel? It's a strange gospel. It's a gospel about a guy who gets caught embezzling money, but he's clever. And so the parable about this guy is not that you should be embezzling money. The parable is supposed to challenge you that if you say that you're a Christian, then you also should be clever and ingenious and aggressive about getting the agenda of goodness to win. And the point of the parable is this. Hey, listen, to corrupt, they're not going to stop. People who are corrupt, they're going to find a way to cheat and cheat and cheat. And if they're going to be aggressive and clever, then Jesus is basically saying we need to be aggressive and clever as well. We need to be like the nun or like Mildred. And it's a great story because he's so clever about how he embezzles the money. He has 1 hour before he's going to be fired. So what he does is take the ledger and he has people put it in their handwriting, which is clever because if he gets caught, he can say, hey, that's not my handwriting. That's, their handwriting. And it's not just a little bit of supplies he's embezzling. If you get the equivalent cost, it was tens of thousands and thousands of dollars he's actually embezzling. But he's not putting it in his account, so he can't be taken away. He's having it put in other people's account. It's very clever. And the master praises him, not for cheating. The master praises him for being clever. We too are supposed to be very clever on how we're going to end corruption in the world. We just got to be more clever, because they're going to be. Or he has 1 hour. So there's this sense of urgency. He's not going to be patient. He's going to get things done quickly. We're supposed to be the same way, that there should be this sense of urgency, that we're not going to give up. Because I hate to say this drives me up the wall, that I sometimes find Christians too passive, in the sense they'll say, God will handle it. No, get on it yourself. Be aggressive. The same way he's impatient, I think impatience is a virtue sometimes. I really do. I know everybody says patience is a virtue, maybe. But I also think impatience is a virtue. Now, I mention that suddenly realizing that before Mass started, one of our altar servers, not saying who, it's a girl, anyhow, she was trying to convince me of something, and I appreciate that. And I said, you've got to be, now listen to me. I said, you got to be patient. She says, I'm not patient. I'm like my grandmother. She's not patient either. Anyhow, I do consider impatience in some ways a virtue. Because think about this. I actually read this study too. Not sure if it's true. Don't have kids, but doesn't mean I don't have theories about children. Is that what they found out is that for little kids, it actually helps if the parent is slightly impatient. Because if a kid does something wrong and crosses a line, if you're impatient, then as a parent you can say, Brooklyn, don't do that again. Don't you, Brooklyn, stop it. And they say that on the neural pathways, it creates this exclamation point. Oh gosh, don't do that. To raise small children, a little bit of impatience is a good thing. Now, my only point being, with all the evil and corruption in the world, maybe being passive is not always a good thing. Maybe we have to have this sense of urgency, the same way the corrupt accountant, he was getting things done quick. And he was bold. He was aggressive. Christ praises that kind of aggressiveness. As I said, evil's not going to stop. It's going to continue. They're going to try and cheat and corrupt. We've got to make sure goodness and life and justice wins out. We're the ones. And the other thing I like is when he's told the bad news that he's going to be fired, he doesn't curl up in a ball and say, oh, I'm a victim. I really like that. Because I think too many people, their sense of goodness is that they can't be aggressive. And so they'll say, well, I just wish circumstances would change. I wish God or the government would do something. And I always kind of want to say, stop playing the victim. You're not powerless. Be clever. Be bold. Be aggressive. Be like the nun. Be like, not evil, but like the accountant. Granted, everything he does is really for corruption. But we can be aggressive as well. And do you remember, I've said this 1,000 times, in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus' favorite word is hospitality or welcome. He uses it in this parable too, where he says, the corrupt accountant, he will create a welcome place for himself. He said, you also have got to create, we, the children of light, we're supposed to create this welcome space for those who are getting abused, for those who are rejected or marginalized or threatened. We're the ones who are going to find some clever way to guard their life. Corrupt people, they're only going to make sure they're welcomed. We make sure everybody's life is guarded. We're the ones who are supposed to be clever. And so when Christ concludes by saying you cannot serve God and mammon, the big question is, what the heck is mammon? Mammon, a lot of times people want to translate it money. Technically, it's not money. Mammon is anything that you value greater than God. So it could be a good thing. Money is not evil. But if that's all you really care about, it is an evil. It's mammon. It could be anything, really. So people, like, the point being is that people, if they really value something, they'll find a way to get it, no matter what it is. Even if it's like let's say, have you ever worked with somebody who's lazy? And they're really lazy, and there's no way, there's no way you can get somebody to work when they're lazy. You can create rules and regulations or, watch their time. They will find some way to be lazy. If what they value is laziness, they'll find a way. What they value is money. They'll find a way to cheat you. We're the ones who, we don't serve mammon. We serve God. And so Christ says the children of darkness are far more clever than you. You guys the children of light have got to be clever. I mean, I think there's something just pathetic about being passive in life. We're the ones who are supposed to help end corruption. And just think about this. Like the Catholic Church, we have billions of people. What if all of us agreed in our own little way, whether as a teacher or a nurse or a nun, in our own little way, we try and end the corruption around us. We find some clever way of reducing corruption in the world. That's what we're supposed to be. There's sometimes Christian thinks that the gospel is basically be nice and be good. That's all that Christ wants, is that you're good. No, Christ wants a lot more. In this parable, he wants us to be clever and aggressive, like the nun, like Mildred. We're the ones who are supposed to change the world. And so, be clever or aggressive. Otherwise, injustice will win. We're the children of light, and we want corruption to end. So let us be bold. And so together, let us stand and profess our faith.